Welcome to the Toronto Maple Leafs Lounge Trade Deadline edition. I'm sure everyone is pushing refresh on their screens, watching what the latest news is, where players are going, who's changing jerseys. It's kind of like playing the video games this weekend with all the swaps that could happen and guys in different places. So to talk about it is the amazing staff from the Hockey Writers that cover the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that is Peter Baracchini and Alex Hobson. Thanks very much for joining us. I know you guys have been pushing refresh on the screens. So let's
non-stop.
I'm sure by the time this goes to air, it'll be somewhat dated. We can put it up live right now and it's going to be dated because it's happening by the minute. But let's start with the rundown. Big news from the Maple Leafs camp when it comes to the goaltender situation. We've been talking about it for a long time with the status of Frederik Andersen now put retroactively on the long-term injury reserve list. And that opens up quite a few millions in cash that they can play around with right now and see what they can juggle with until the deadline. So that kind of opens up a whole new can of worms when it comes to their goaltender situation. So trade deadline. I'm going to start with, we know that call was made to Buffalo for Linus Oberg, young guy that could be a long-term type solution. We all love Jack Campbell, but Linus could be the guy that kind of starts getting bread to come up and eventually be the new number one in Toronto. That's who I'm wondering if the Leafs are going to pursue by the deadline on Monday. Peter, who are you targeting for that goaltender situation?
Really good question because I mean, like you said, they got quite a bit of money to spend with, $5.8 million. And after what happened with the acquisition with Riley Nash recently, it opens up a lot of options. And right now, in terms of goaltending, Linus Oberg seems like the best option. He's at a cheaper hit than some of the other goalies right now. I believe he's at $2.6 million. A UFA at the end of the year. If he resigns, great. He's got some really good numbers this year, and that's a really good silver lining for him because the Buffalo Sabres really, nothing's gone right for them. So if the Maple Leafs were to try and acquire him, it would be a great solid addition to the backup role possibly. I still think Jack Campbell would be the one to lead the Leafs heading forward, but adding someone like Oberg would just help them out tremendously if Andersen is gone long-term.
I can't believe you skated past that one, Peter, because you had so much taco with Darcy Kuemper. Yeah. And he's still, you know, if you look at the TSN trade bait tracker, Darcy Kuemper is still on that list. And still a lot of people think he's going to be moved.
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting. And I know what I wrote about that and the comment section blew up with that. But at the same time, if there is a package deal to be involved in that, if they do feel like Darcy Kuemper is the better option than over Oberg and maybe even over Campbell, I don't know. But to have that stability in net, no matter who you get, whether if Arizona is a trading partner, whether it's Buffalo, do they go after Chris Driedger from Florida? A lot of options at this moment, and it's endless. And Kyle Dubas definitely has his work cut out, but you know what? He knows what he's doing. So we have the utmost faith in him no matter what.
Alex, what are you thinking? There's a few names there that Peter mentioned. Any other names you want to throw on that list? And which one do you think is the most realistic possibility of coming to Toronto?
I'm not entirely sure if I'd throw any other names out there. I think certainly if they were going to be in the market for a goaltender, it would be Linus Oberg because he's got a 500 record playing for the Buffalo Sabres. I don't think you have to say anything else there. Having said that, though, I'm not actually sure the Leafs are going to make a trade for a goaltender just because I think they're still anticipating Freddie Andersen being back before the playoffs and easing him back into not the starter's role, I guess, but with how hot Jack Campbell's been, but at least easing him back to a point where they can rely on him. And Sheldon, I remember, gave a pretty wide margin of when Freddie could be back. He said after the trade deadline before the playoffs. I know that's obviously a couple of weeks, but to me, that tells me that Freddie Andersen's not going to be out super long term to the point where they would need to acquire a goaltender. So I don't really see a move being done for a goalie just because of that. But if they were to, I would probably say Oberg.
And in Keith's lines, when asked about if Andersen is actually going to make it back, he said he's not concerned. So there you go. Let's switch gears then.
There was recent news this morning about him possibly being no timeline available at this point. So it's still technically up in the air with Andersen.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. So let's switch gears then, and we'll move out from the net to the defense. And obviously it's very much improved this year, but the more and more you're watching these games, the more and more I'm seeing Travis Dermott is the odd man out. His ice time has been cut a little bit, and you're seeing those top four play quite a bit more of the ice, and the bottom two, not so much. So I do think that the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be trying to improve the defensive core going forward, get another real shutdown guy in there. They don't need another Morgan Riley or Tyson Barrie, but they do need another shutdown guy that could add some sandpaper onto that blue line. So that's why my choice, if it's not Mark Savard, who is the biggest defenseman out there right now, would be Oleksiak from Dallas. That dude is a monster, like 6'8". He's like a Chara type of guy. You saw him in the playoffs last year. He doesn't care about goals or assists, or he just cares about knocking somebody off the puck at the blue line. And he's a monster. I would love to see him come over. He's only worth $2.17 million. So I think Toronto could really make a deal to get Oleksiak in the blue and white. So Alex, what are you looking at for an upgrade to the blue line?
I really like the idea of Jamie Oleksiak. I know his name's kind of been tossed around there and circulating throughout the rumor mill that never leaves the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I think he would be I think he'd be a great acquisition personally. If I also had to consider somebody else, I know I've been on the Alex Iafallo hype train for a long time, and I generally look to LA when it comes to trade acquisitions because Dubas and Rob Blake appear to have a great relationship, and they've shown that in the past couple of years. But if we're talking about a defenseman, I think Matt Roy would also be he'd be a good option. He's a very solid bottom pairing defenseman. He plays a very stable defensive game. Won't do much offensively. I think he's got 9 points in 30 games or something this year, but regardless, you're not paying him to do that. And the Leafs certainly, like you said, Kevin, they don't need a guy like Morgan Riley or one of those puck moving guys. And he's also relatively young. I think he's maybe 25 or 26 at this point. So sort of fits into the age group that the Leafs have going right now. And yeah, I think if it's not Oleksiak, I'd be down to see them get Matt Roy. I think he'd be a solid acquisition.
Peter?
I know you said no to David Savard because, he is the biggest fish at this point. Columbus is holding him out again. I do think that he would be serviceable for the Maple Leafs, given the fact that he could eat up minutes, penalty kill. He's just a solid all-around player that you'd like to have in that third pairing role. I think before I looked at Cap Friendly and saw the injury players looking at defense, I went to Arizona again. And
they're going to love you in the desert.
It was just the fact that, like, before there was top six forward and goaltender. So now it was before he was injured, and maybe if he was healthy, maybe Nicholas Chalmerson, who, bit of a heavier cap hit, something that I think the Maple Leafs could have afforded. They're trying to get a third team in to try and eat some of that cap hit as they're talking right now. If he was healthy, with the experience that he's had with the cup rings, the playoffs, with the Chicago Blackhawks, I definitely think he would have benefited and be that leader on the back end. Like you do have Thornton, Spezza, and John Tavares up front. So I definitely think that maybe if he was healthy, not at the moment right now, but if he was healthy, I would have considered him.
Nice. All right. And that does lead us into the forwards. And since the puck dropped, everyone talked about we need a new forward in Toronto in that top six. I really think Alex Galchenyuk is the guy that's in that top six pairing now, and there isn't as much need there. I don't see it anymore. And we did see that they picked up a depth forward already with Riley Nash. So I don't see the forward situation needing as much attention. I still think defense and depending on what's going on in the net, but that's where things could happen for Toronto. But let's talk about the forward situation. Obviously, there's lots of guys out there that would make excellent rentals, teams that aren't making it in, got a couple games left with these guys. I'm going to say, and it might go back to my roots, that I lived in Sudbury, Ontario for a few years. And I talked to Mike Foligno when he became the coach of the Sudbury Wolves. And I was at his house and there were his boys playing beach volleyball. And now here we are talking about his sons. And it's obviously pulling out heartstrings that I'd love to see Nick Foligno in the blue and white in his dad's old number as well, and add that grit to the bottom six. I think it would be an awesome addition. And we've heard it. Keefe and Dubas have said, we want a team of leaders. And we know Foligno is a leader. He's the captain of the Blue Jackets. He'd come in and just be another leader, be another go-to guy, another grit guy that would be very difficult to play against in the playoffs. That's my choice for a forward that I'd love to see come to Toronto. Peter, who would you like to see?
Like you said, the top six seems pretty much intact, especially with the way that Galchenyuk has been playing. And like you said, someone maybe a middle six forward that can play in the second or third line role. Nick Foligno, really good option. I recently wrote about him, Scott Laughton from the Philadelphia Flyers. I thought that, with his energy, his presence to be a penalty killer, his speed, his ability to get on the forecheck is just that energy presence that they could need. Same like Foligno. Philadelphia has kind of a bit of an issue right now, whether they are going to protect him or not for the expansion draft. If he comes over to Toronto, there's a possibility that, Toronto could expend somebody else and manage to keep Laughton under protection and give him a contract. So a lot of variables there, but I do like the fact that Laughton could provide a lot of consistency on that third pairing if needed.
Philadelphia does have an issue, and that's New York Rangers.
Definitely
terrible.
Hurt me in fantasy hockey.
Yes. Alex, what kind of forward are you looking at that you're hoping Dubas may pull the trigger on?
If whoever's watching has paid any attention to the articles that I've written over the past little bit, you know that I'm also still a big fan of Alex Galchenyuk. And when we're talking about trade chips, I am still a big fan of Alex Iafallo. But truth be told, you had my answer there, Kevin. I think I've really become a fan of Nick Foligno over these past few days. And I think, especially after we saw them make the trade with Columbus for Riley Nash yesterday, he's on LTIR until the playoffs, and he's a good defensive center. But the point is, they won't be dressing Riley Nash until they're in the playoffs, and his cap doesn't matter. But by putting him and Freddie on LTIR, you've got $7.5 million in cap space to work with. So as much as I do think Dubas made that trade for Nash because, he's a good defensive center and he could provide some forward depth for the playoffs, I don't think it was a move strictly for him. I think it was also a move for cap purposes. And just like Dubas and Blake have a good relationship, Dubas and Kekalainen also have a good relationship, it seems. And like you said, Kevin, they're looking to fill up their dressing room with leaders. And I think Nick Foligno, although he makes 5.5, he's off the books after this year. He wouldn't count that much against the cap, or he would count against the cap, but it wouldn't put them in a position where they'd be handcuffed. And I think he's a guy that I love the way that he played against Toronto in the bubble last year. And, well, I didn't love how he played against Toronto, but I loved his style of game. And I think he would be a huge addition to this team for the middle six for sure.
All right. Great minds think alike. I can even tell you leading into that bubble series, and when we found out that it was Toronto against Columbus, I was going to write an article about Foligno and I couldn't even do it. I remember the kid playing beach volleyball in front of me.
That's a hell of a story.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Okay. So good talk about the goaltenders, the defense, the forwards, and make sure that you're going to be subscribing to this channel, because next week we will be seeing how close we got to our trade deadline predictions. So subscribe to the Hockey Writers on YouTube. Follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, anywhere you want to be, we are there. And of course, head over to thehockeywriters.com for in-depth opinions. And maybe I'll pour my heart out a little bit about the beach volleyball with the Folignos. That was a lot of fun. Okay. So that's kind of where we're saying those make sense. So this is where we can be a little bit wild. We've all got on the video games and pulled some crazy trades on easy mode to create a dream team. So let's throw out the wildest trade idea that if you could make it happen, you would somehow make it happen for the Leafs by Monday. And I know, Alex, you've been jumping all over this. I can't even wait to hear what this crazy idea is going to be. So let's hear it, Alex.
All right. So a couple things we've heard over the past couple weeks or so. The Leafs need power play help. Everybody knows that. The Leafs are in the market for a top six forward. Everybody knows that. The Leafs are looking for a rental specifically. Friedman said that a couple days ago. there is a guy who plays for the Columbus Blue Jackets who checks off all the boxes here. Contract is up after this year. He is not named Nick Foligno. He's Finnish. He was taken second overall after Austin Matthews. If you don't know who I'm talking about by this point, Patrik Laine. No, realistically, I don't think this trade would ever happen. I don't think he's a guy that Columbus would want to give up on first and foremost. I don't think he's been really fitting in with Tortorella's system, and he's been struggling lately. And I think the Blue Jackets are at a point where they'd probably pick Laine over Torts. I think Torts is more or less overstayed his welcome in Columbus by this point. But I'm just picturing absolute chaos, putting Laine on at the top of the circle on one side on the power play, and then Matthews on the other side. Just for all the times that we compared Austin Matthews and Patrik Laine, to capitalize on him and bring him to Toronto as a UFA, and then just bring him in for this final cup run in this season under wild circumstances. I think that would be a hell of a trade, and I think I don't know if the media would be able to handle it, but that's my absolute wild trade idea.
I love it. I actually don't think it's as wild as out there as you think. I think Columbus really is going to be trying and to clean things up. But yeah, you're right. Laine just not fitting with that current system. So you got to pick between them. The guy can't be riding the pine next season as well. Yeah. So I like it. That is a nice trade. That's
bold statement.
Nice trade. And in full transparency, on NHL 21, I do have Laine with Matthews. So
love it.
Peter, who you got for the wild trades?
I don't know if I could top that. That would just be not fair. Like, I mean, come on, having Matthews and Laine as the shooters on one power play. Come on. I mean, how do I top that? Thanks, Alex. Honestly, I'm not big, or like I'm never come close to like any of the major like wild trades like Alex did right there. I try to be like fair and modest at the same time, but although Laine, I probably would like to try and see that happen no matter what. I think if I'm looking at maybe not a wild trade, but something unsuspecting, I've seen his name a bit among Twitter chat, just, random talk, and Jaden Schwartz from the St. Louis Blues. The St. Louis Blues are, in a dogfight right now. They're hanging on to a playoff spot. They've had 2 really good games, but have fallen since. He's got a big, hefty contract. Can they try and move him? Again, another team come and try and eat some of that salary as a third team. And I think putting him, if they do try to add another top 6 help, I think Jaden Schwartz has that speed. He can still be a really good setup man. He's still got a really good shot. Seen it yesterday with their game against the Minnesota Wild, or their previous game. And I think he would be a really good asset to them. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. But I think that if we're going for just one random player or random trade, I think Schwartz could be one.
That's my fault. I should have put it in the opposite direction. So you had to follow up a pretty big one there, Peter. So
yeah, sorry, I could not follow up Laine. I'm sorry, Alex took it from me.
That is pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, here's mine, and this would be a ground shaker, and it's why, as I had to discuss on a podcast earlier in the week, they threw Montreal to me, and me talking about Montreal gives me boils and stuff. So that kind of relates to this trade. Carey Price to Toronto. For 2 reasons.
Wow.
Okay.
You piqued my interest.
Just to give it to Montreal. And I don't care if he plays a game, but he's in a Leaf jersey. And if they happen to win the cup, he wins the cup with the Leafs. All those Habs fans would lose their mind. I'd love it. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah.
Carey Price somehow getting to Toronto. That's wild and everything.
I think whatever assets they'd give up for Price would be worth it just to see the reaction of Carey Price wearing the blue and white. I think that's all that matters.
I think it just made a lot of enemies, Kevin. I really do think so.
We're all hockey fans here. It's
Definitely,
okay.
yeah.
It's okay.
We're all dreamers.
I even think of last year in the bubble when Montreal had to play and they had to come out of the Leafs locker room, and there was a few clips of players. So what was it like coming out of the Leafs locker room? Like, not very nice. It was just like, if you're a Hab, you just don't want to be over there. But yeah, that would be a lot of fun. So That was fun. I like those ideas. We'll see which one actually comes through. So let's go back and outside of Toronto for a little bit. And who is going to be the biggest wheeler and dealer? Who do you guys see could really shake their team up? Maybe for the future, maybe for the playoff run in the next 2 months here, 3 months. So let's start with you, Peter, because I don't want you to get upstaged again. So, Peter, who are you seeing as the big wheeler and dealer?
I'm just scrolling through the standings right now to try and gain, kind of see what's going on. I think if you're the Boston Bruins right now, you're holding on to the fourth spot in that East Division right now. And the New York Rangers are creeping up around with 5 points behind. So if you're the Boston Bruins, I think maybe you want to try and add some top six depth because, the perfection line is doing all the heavy lifting and they want to add some more depth. I know they signed Craig Smith in the offseason, but they want to add more. So I think Boston is one name to keep an eye on to try and make a move to try and solidify their spots. In terms of trying to gain some assets, I mean, I think you're still looking at teams like the LA Kings, Anaheim Ducks, kind of still in a rebuild situation, most likely the Ducks. We've seen how great Trevor Zegras and Jamie Drysdale have been. Josh Manson's name has come up quite a bit. Rickard Rakell is still on the market. So you have two names that could probably bring in a really good return, first round picks, prospects. I'm looking at that for them. And maybe even the Detroit Red Wings, they still want to maintain that path, add some more picks, prospects, get that deep pool like the Maple Leafs. And you know what, Steve Yzerman, he's been a smart guy so far. So I'm thinking those four teams are at the top of my list.
Yeah. And if you swing on over to the Hockey Writers and click on the Red Wings team, they've been writing some really cool articles about which guys you would send out. And, they're putting it all on the table. I've seen some articles about Mantha, and man, would that be a haul? And you'd have to pay up big time for a guy like that. But you see him on a playoff team and grinding in the playoffs, that would be pretty awesome to watch.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Alex, who do you think is going to be the busiest at the deadline?
Well, I mean, Peter gave the obvious answer there with Boston, because Boston, for whatever reason, every single year always tends to make that big move right before the deadline. And usually I'm a little more upset about it because we're in the same division as them, but that's not the case this year. I think we're going to see, I mean, we're talking about how Arizona could be shopping Connor Garland and how St. Louis could be shopping Jaden Schwartz. And both those teams are right on the brink of that fourth and final playoff spot in the West Division. So I think we could honestly see either of those teams buy a little bit, because as much as it may be smarter long-term to sell for one of them, if you're in a playoff spot and you have a chance to make it, they're both significantly, not significantly, I guess, but they're both a little bit further behind Minnesota for that third place spot. They've got Arizona's 7 points behind and St. Louis is 8 points behind. But the way I see it, either of those teams are in contention to get that final playoff spot in the West Division. So I think we could see either of those teams buy as we head towards the deadline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the busiest GM is going to be Kevin Adams. I bet his phone hasn't stopped ringing. Buffalo is a dumpster fire and has been for weeks. And anybody can get traded out of there at this point. And basically, the only way that guy is keeping his job is if he makes a lot of really good trades, because everybody that's there right now is obviously not fitting the bill. So it's time to ship everybody out and restart. And you guys both threw out Boston, and can you see Taylor Hall in Boston? Yeah, that gets talked about quite a bit, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So I'm betting that's a pretty realistic thing. As you guys have said, they go for the big ones. So we'll see. And hopefully that will spell the end for the Bruins, because everywhere Taylor Hall goes, the team loses.
Hope that's the case if he goes to Boston.
Yeah. And then on the flip side of that, I think the teams that could really be busy on loading up I actually do think it's the team we cover. I really think Dubas has shown his intelligence for the game and picking up players. And I think this is his time to shine. He's put together a team that, everyone was against. I will say I was critical, and I kind of remain critical on 4 forwards taking up half of your salary cap, but he's made it work. He's doing a great job. And if he can pull something here to bring in a shutdown defenseman, a gritty forward, help in the net, I think Toronto could really be the headliner in this deadline.
Rather have 40 million tied up in 4 forwards than 26 million tied up in your bottom 6. Cough, Jim Benning, cough.
Yeah. Yeah. If anybody's looking, he said recently that he's not worried about the cap situation. He really should be worried about the cap situation.
I feel like he probably should be too. I don't know if that was the best take.
Yeah. And who knows at this point if Vancouver's even going to be back.
Yeah.
I think, like, obviously not to make fun of the COVID situation, but things were not going well there already. They're not looking good for the future. And it's probably nice for those players to be able to get away a little bit earlier than planned, because it's, yeah. Okay. We'll leave it at that. So now, as we do every week to wrap up the show, and this show we hope you subscribe for on the Hockey Writers on YouTube, and head over to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to leave some comments, because we love to read the comments out and find something that may tweak us for a new article. And I did a story this week, guys, kind of wrapping up, trying to summarize, just give the fans a bit of a cheat sheet on what Dubas is working with going into the deadline. And that made its rounds in social media. And there was a guy on Facebook that put, and he was respectful. And that's the thing about Joe Thornton. If you're going to talk about him, you're going to be respectful, because he's a Hall of Famer. And he just pointed out that he's not getting the ice time. He's been sliding down. He's had a couple injuries. Should he be getting the roster spot at this point, when you've got some speed in the wings waiting to come in, different guys that can do different things with the puck? So we had a good conversation. I threw out that I think it's not only on the ice, it's off the ice. We all know what Thornton brings in the locker room, but it was a very interesting article, and I really appreciated the conversation, because it's not something that I would have thought about. And we hugged it out in the end. So that's all nice. So that was my interaction on social media this week. Alex, what did you see on social media this week?
Well, I actually have a question to pose for you guys. It's not necessarily a tweet that I saw. It was one that I made, and I had a couple of people respond to it. I think it's a pretty interesting topic. So I was watching the Blue Jays game yesterday, and I know we're not going to turn this into a baseball show, but I saw Shohei Ohtani just completely destroy the Jays yesterday. And everybody, I'm sure everyone knows at this point, he's a hell of a ball player. He can pitch and he can hit, and he's one of the rare two-way talents in the game. And it got me thinking, if there was to be a player in the NHL who could double up as a forward, as a skater or a goalie, who do you guys think it would be? I got a couple of different answers to this. I had one guy say Malcolm Subban, because apparently he was a forward when he played AAA, and he was the fastest guy on the ice by far. I had people saying Darren Helm. I had people saying Mitch Marner, Brent Burns. So there's a couple different options out there. I'd like to know what you guys think. If there was to be a guy who could do both, who would it be?
Yeah, I was going to say Marner. When we see that net empty, it's been Marner that's been playing kind of the pseudo goaltender, and he's made some pretty great plays. We see him throw himself all over the ice as it is. So he'd obviously be a hybrid goalie, because he'd be a gymnast in there, but those are some interesting names. That's an interesting idea. But that's who I would say at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that just because he played baseball and he is on the Maple Leafs as well, I'm thinking maybe Austin Matthews, because there are some times where he may not be diving a lot into crease like Mitch Marner, but he has made a couple of key saves coming back on the back check to save a goal. And also, if you're looking for a goaltender, he's got some pretty good size to take up the full net. So whether or not he does a good job in that, I don't know. But yeah, that's
the first time.
If this is a TSN Quizmaster question, I think this is it, because it's kind of random, but really good.
Yeah. I was going to say, I don't think I've ever heard the sentence Austin Matthews made some key saves before. That's a first for me.
I mean, he has saved a couple of pretty good goals in the past. So, hey,
actual statement.
It's on the spot. I really didn't have time to think, and I just immediately thought of Austin Matthews, because it's Austin Matthews.
Wasn't it just last week that, I can't remember who they were playing, but all three guys were going back in overtime, and if the puck had got past Austin, it was going to be
that save. It was against Ottawa.
Yeah, right. When he kicked it back in. Yeah,
right. So you might be onto something.
I'm in the clear.
There's your answer.
So what did you see on social media this week, Peter, that had you thinking?
This is kind of last minute. I logged into Twitter this morning and I saw a random statement. Matthew Boldy, he's a prospect in the Minnesota Wild system. Great prospect to have. He's going to have a really great future, great offensive presence, and he's going to be someone that's going to score quite a bit in their top six. I see a tweet from, I'm not going to name the account. It's just the account or the person that tweeted it out said AHL career goals. Matt Boldy, 1. Austin Matthews, 0. Ovechkin, 0. Crosby, 0. Says something. It says that, Matthews, Ovechkin, and Crosby didn't need the AHL because they're elite superstar players. I don't know what he was trying to get at. I don't know if it was a joke or not. It just really caught my attention this morning. But hey, I mean, Boldy's going to be a great pick, a great prospect and player. But man, they compare him and his AHL goals to Matthews, Ovechkin, and Crosby.
I don't think McDavid has an AHL goal for what it's worth.
Yeah, neither does Tavares, I don't think so.
No.
That's funny.
It's funny because I'm hoping it was sarcastic, but sometimes, it's something to do with there's a lot of new fans to the game. Mm-hmm. Remember the fan in St. Louis that watched his first game and he started freaking out on Twitter because
Tony X.
The goalie left. Yeah. The goalie just left the game. He just left. He skated off. He couldn't believe it, but he didn't know, right? Like
that was the most entertaining night on Twitter I've ever had when I was following along with his tweets, watching his first ever hockey game.
It's great.
Even as a kid watching a goalie leave the net, I would be like, wait, what's going on? Why is he leaving the net? Get back in the crease. So, but as you watch the game more, you get an understanding. So,
yeah. And maybe that fan thought, isn't everyone supposed to go through AHL? Like these guys didn't even score in the AHL. This guy, he's going to be a superstar because he's better. Like, I don't know. Yeah. You never know.
Yeah.
And maybe he will be. Then we'll be rolling back on this in a few years, Peter, and be like,
Rocket Richard winner. Matt Boldy.
All right. Well, that was a great chat today, guys. Thanks so much for coming on and spending some time. And I think I've got a few ideas for what my articles will be. I've got to write the Foligno piece. I've got to talk about volleyball. That was a lot of fun. So we do this every week and we really appreciate all of the interaction we get from our fans. So please subscribe to our channel, leave some comments, let us know what you would like to see us talk about on the Maple Leafs Lounge. Until next week, which will be post deadline. So we'll see how we did. It's all on tape now. We will see you then. Have a great week.